We have all seen how, in the case of the Ram Janmabhoomi temple at Ayodhya, the country rallied together to put up the huge sum of money needed to construct the temple. About 300 crores for the temple itself, while the whole complex is about 1100 crores. And because of the times we are in, when the country is a lot wealthier, with the presence of social media, that money and more was able to be raised in just about a year. But times were not always like this. Today, we are going to hear the story of a temple's fundraising project from over 40 years ago. This story is about the unfinished Mottai Gopuram in Srirangam and how that Gopuram was finished and the remarkable incidents that happened in the process of finishing its construction. In the Ranganatha Swami temple in Srirangam, the southern Gopuram was unfinished for at least 400 years. And over time, a superstition had developed around this unfinished Gopuram. As you would recall, the story of Srirangam is that the vimana was originally to go to Sri Lanka with Vibhishana, but chose to install itself in Srirangam. And the temple has one of the rare vigrahas that faces the south, with Ranganatha promising to oversee Sri Lanka, which is in that direction. And it so happened that while building the massive temple complex over the centuries, this southern Gopuram was started but never finished for over 400 years. Over time, a belief came about that this Gopuram was not destined to be completed by divine choice, as completing the construction would damage Sri Lanka, as the structure would block the south-facing Ranganatha's view, thus depriving the island of his beneficial gaze. So there was some reluctance to take up the Gopuram construction due to this belief. In the late 1970s, the head of the Ahobilam Mutt, the Jeer, had a vision of Ranganatha who said, "You have constructed the Rajagopuram for SrI Nrsimha temple at Ahobilam. So you shouldn't cheat me by displaying partiality. You should go finish my Rajagopuram at Srirangam. Don't worry, whatever obstacles you face, I will enter the minds of people and convince them to help you." So this became a huge project in those times. To build 13 stories cost around 50 lakhs, which is equivalent to 10 crores in today's money. And at a time when the country was not as prosperous as it is today. And combine the large sum of money with the belief that building the Gopuram was a doomed project and the age of the Jeer who was 85 at that time. All these greatly concerned the Jeer, who was worried that the project may fail or would be considered as his vanity project. But he kept getting visions of Ranganatha until he was impelled to action. The Jeer initiated the construction by putting down a few lakhs collected for the Gopuram. And miraculously, every time the construction of a new story was to commence, someone would come forward to finance its cost. And some of the illustrious donors who had contributed to full stories include Ilayaraja, the musician, and advocate Parasaran, who argued and won in the Supreme Court in the Ram Janmabhoomi case. Like this, people came forward and things seemed to happen by divine providence over 8 years. And finally, the Gopuram construction was completed in 1987. Besides the famous and the rich who donated generously, there were several ordinary devotees who also contributed. And here are 3 interesting cases. The first is about a boy from a poor family in Kolar who came to Srirangam to give 1000 rupees, which is about 20,000 in today's context. The people at the mutt were taken aback at this gesture on hearing about the boy's background. The boy explained, "My father had kept 4,000 in the bank before he died several years ago. My mother did not touch that money and raised us on her own with great difficulty. We did not know about this Gopuram project. A few days ago, my father came in my mother's dream asking her to give you 1000 rupees from the bank for the Gopuram and that she will not suffer because of this. So here I am to fulfill his wishes." And here's the second story. An aged person approached the Jeer and gave 1040 rupees as his contribution. On being asked about the odd sum of 40, he explained, 4 months ago, I had intended to donate 1000 rupees for the Gopuram and kept aside the money. Then I changed my mind and dropped the idea. Last night, an old man came in my dreams and asked, why have you not sent the 1000 rupees? Who did you think that money belongs to? Is it not mine? Take the cash immediately and add 40 rupees to it as interest of rupees 10 per month for the 4 months of delay and go give it to the GR. So this morning I rushed to meet you to give the 1000 plus 40 as interest. Of course, the GR had no doubt who the old man in the dream was. And here's the final story, and a humorous one at that. It's about an old poor woman who came to the matham and begged for alms of 5 rupees and was given that money by the mutt, which she promptly gave back to the mutt, saying that was her contribution to the Gopuram and her way of gaining some punya for it. In this way, those with no means at all and those who could afford to pay for full stories across the spectrum rallied to come forward and support the Gopuram cause. People from other faiths too pitched in. And finally, during his 93rd year, the GR could see the completed project and the Gopuram consecration in March 1987. And this is the interesting story of how the majestic, the grand Rajagopuram, the tallest Gopuram in India, was completed. On a side note, the belief in Sri Lanka was that if this Gopuram is completed, the protection of the island would decrease. On a purely speculative angle, just about the time the Gopuram construction was finished, the Sri Lankan civil war broke out and chaos lasted for 20 odd years. But over the longer term, things seem to have settled down.
அருளமுதம் பொதிந்த கோயில் ஆராத அருளமுதம் பொதிந்த கோயில் அம்புய தோணையோதி மன்னர் கலித்த கோயில் தோலாத தனி வீரன் தொழுத கோயில் தோலாத தனி வீரன் தொழுத கோயில் துணையான வீடனர்க்கு துணையாம் கோயில் சேராத பயனெல்லாம் சேர்க்கும் கோயில் செழுமறையின் முதலெழுத்து சேர்ந்த கோயில் தீராத வினை அனைத்தும் தீர்க்கும் கோயில் திருவரங்கம் என திகழும் கோயில் தானே திருவரங்கம் என திகழும் கோயில் தானே திருவரங்கம் என திகழும் கோயில் தானே